Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is Impossible Landscapes for Delta Green the Role-Playing Game by Arcgreen Publishing, Part 4. In this video I'll be covering the second part of the campaign, a volume of Secret Faces. This video will be in two parts. The first part will cover the meeting with Agent Exeter, there'll be Dr. Barbus's residence, the Trivolino Mall and Dorchester House, and the second video will cover Nurse Samagina's residence, Encounter Group, Citri's residence, Dorchester House by night, and Exeunt the missing room. I originally planned to cover this in one video, however, upon further reading I've decided that as it's such a long chapter, rich with detail, that it should be done in two. The chapter begins with another quote from the King in Yellow, and then we move on to the idea behind this part of the campaign. It's set in Boston in 2015, 20 years after the Night Floors, with the players taking on the role of the agents that survived. They're given the mission to locate a group of patients who have escaped a private psychiatric hospital called Dorchester House that has had a long-standing association with Delta Green. What has actually happened is that a Delta Green patient there has been exposed to the King in Yellow, and unfortunately, remaining there has caused them to interact with the staff despite the director of the facility, Dr. Dallin, trying to isolate them. The infection has spread and it has warped the facility in a manner similar to the McAllister building, though, as with that building, the changes are subtle to newcomers. Everyone there is a vector for the King in Yellow, spreading to the homes, vehicles and belongings of the employees. The employees themselves are described as being beacons of strangeness, taking the nature of Carcosa wherever they go like radioactive fallout. Everyone there has been changed in some way. During the daytime they look normal, but by night they never sleep and live odd existences, performing strange tasks to appease the King. This change in Dorchester House grows daily, though only those corrupted and open to the King in Yellow can see these changes, and those that stay there find themselves changed in some way. What the agents don't know is that they are the third Delta Green investigation to go into Dorchester House. First it was servants of the King that compromised Dr. Barbus. A team was sent to investigate him, however they were captured and kept in the night world where they remain. At this stage Barbus is under the sway of the King and has called in the players' agents. The actual Delta Green is completely oblivious to the growing infection at Dorchester House, the King in Yellow drawing in the agents for some reason beyond our ability to understand. We have an in the field section which discusses the different stages of this chapter. The whole thing is a double fake to dislodge the players that starts in reality and by the end they should not even be aware of where they are. They begin on the outside searching for missing patients. The second stage involves them exploring the horrors of Dorchester House and the locales infected with Carcosa. The third stage is getting into Dorchester House after dark, where they become patients in the facility and trapped in the night world version of the place, filled with monsters, the lost and the damned. And in part 4 they escape the night world and receive a note from the Clockwork Child, urging them to find the Whisper Labyrinth underneath the elusive Hotel Broadalbin. So, it begins on the 28th of August 2015, when each of the surviving agents receive an invitation via FedEx to a private birthday party of a Richard Zialoni at the Gateway Bridges restaurant in Boston at 8 p.m. on the 1st of September. None of them know a Richard Zialoni, however, the front of the envelope is embossed with a green triangle which indicates who has sent it to them. Anyone who speaks Polish or has a decent enough foreign languages skill can determine that Zialoni is the Polish word for green. This is illustrated here. It is clearly of a high quality and has fine handwriting with odd flourishes. If at some point the agents compare them, they can notice small differences which show that they were done by hand but are almost perfect copies. Anyone skilled in forensics can determine that it was done with the right hand and likely male, but it's not by Barbus. More on him shortly. If it is studied with a skill in calligraphy, it shows evidence that the person who did it was trembling slightly and that some of the letters have a tiny dot in pencil above them. Quite chillingly, they spell out, "Help me," and it gains the person discovering this +1 corruption. The paper stock is luxuriant and hand-pressed, though there are no obvious craftsman marks. It can be noted that it is actually 2 sheets of paper, and if they are separated, they can get a page of a hidden exemplar. This is Barbus's handwriting, and is actually not a clue. Someone skilled in forensics knows what this is. There is a gold foil stamp of an occult symbol with the letters PURSO and N on it. They may have actually already come across this before in the McAllister building, causing a minor sun hit, though the occult skill can reveal it is a demonology symbol from the Ars Goetia. When an agent has a good look at it, a fire alarm will go off nearby for no reason. Okay, the next disinformation section talks about surveilling the restaurant. It's a fairly run-of-the-mill establishment that can be easily watched from nearby with little chance of being discovered. Employees arrive between 2 to 3 p.m. and leave around 2 a.m. It has a large party room that can be spied upon. Barbus, their mysterious contact, arrives at 7 p.m. and he will sit in the room alone. Those who watch him may notice that occasionally he will take a pill-like item from his coat and swallow it. If a wire is installed in the room, he can be heard singing a song to himself. It can be recognised as the poem Songs of the Sea Children by Bliss Carman that was found in Abigail Wright's room and could cause a minor sand hit. Assuming the recently reactivated agents try to find out more about the restaurant, some interesting things can be found out. On the likes of Yelp, the food is described generally as unremarkable and is owned by an Eduardo Diaz, who is unconnected to the operation. The room was booked by an African-American man called Barbus on the 28th of June who paid in cash and left a phone number, which is the home number of Dr. Barbus, though ringing it does nothing, it just rings out. It has a terraced area and 11 tables, pretty bog standard. The party room holds 12, and on the night of the party it will have a stand outside saying it is reserved for Richard Zialoni. If the restaurant is surveilled before the party, Barbus's car, a 2010 Ford Escape, can be seen arriving at 7 p.m. It has a sticker for the Massachusetts State Police and a parking permit for the police building that has been overlaid many times, indicating a long tenure. With this information at hand, the agents could look into Dr. Barbus. He's only on LinkedIn and has a history with the police. The photos match the man at the briefing. Should someone in law enforcement pull strings to get his personnel file, they can discover that he has over 20 years of distinguished service in the Police Crime Laboratory and is president of the National Association of Police Organisations and was within 5 years of retirement before suddenly departing in June 2015. The last section of his file is full of official complaints, warnings and a hearing for psychological help, as well as a formal letter saying he was placed on administrative leave as proceedings are underway to fire him. It also has his home address and phone number. Should an agent try to use bribe to get Dr. Barbus's information, then they could end up in trouble later down the line. If they question employees about him, he can be described as a stickler for the rules, perfectionist and a dedicated public servant, though they may not know of his dismissal. If people who actually worked with him are spoken to, the agents will be stonewalled unless they have influence in the law enforcement sphere. They can eventually meet Detective Emmeline Skean or State Trooper Michael Dorkin, who work with him and whom both are worried about. A critical success can inform them that a member of the DEA was asking about him following his strange behaviour from mid-June onward. So, going back to Dr. Barbus's car, if the agents break into it, they can find a trunk filled with papers and a smashed, oil-stained box marked Evidence, FBI White Plains, Wright-A, 10 Org 95, though it is empty. If the trunk is searched, 2 napkins can be found with strange mechanical devices drawn on them, one marked Liao, the other a scribe. The agents may have already seen these drawings in the McAllister building and they may cause a small sand hit. The car contains insurance papers made out to an Elias M. Barbus with his home address. His occupation is listed as police officer. Heading back to the 2 police employees they can speak to, we first look at Detective Emmeline Skean. Barbus actually assaulted her in June, though charges were dropped. He emailed her to apologise and he agreed to go to counselling but never did. She would claim she saw him writing on a piece of thick tan paper with an old pen and her noticing made him fly off into a rage. She never actually saw what he had written. Incidentally, she is the great-granddaughter of Mark Fitzroy, brother of the prodigy and author Emmeline Fitzroy discussed earlier. If they ask to see the email, she can show them, though has no idea what it means. Though if every capital letter is laid out, it will spell, "Don't follow." If they speak to State Trooper Michael Dorkin, he will tell them that he worked with Dr. Barbus for 4 years and went to his house on the 11th of July to talk him down from his strange behaviour. When entering his home, they found him tearing a bike down into parts. They were served brandy and snacks and he claimed that he had a new job, not saying what it was. At one point, when using the toilet, Dorkin glanced upstairs and saw what he described as a hot woman in a long white revealing gown. This is Ophelia Sitri, more on her later. He actually believes that Barbus and Skean had a lover's quarrel and broke things off as he started seeing this other woman. Right, so back to the party. Anyone who attends will be shown to the private party room at the back of the building, where they will find an African-American man in his 60s already waiting. This is Dr. Barbus. He will introduce himself as Agent Exeter and ask them to sit down. He smells of gasoline, oil and body odour, and when he moves there is the subtle sound of crumpling paper. He will tell them that the operation is Indian Moon and that the objective is to find the former operatives. They were under care in a psychiatric facility in Boston that has Delta Green connections and were committed for some time when they vanished on the 28th of August at around the same time. Obviously the police have not been involved, but Delta Green wants them found. A message was found daubed on the wall in blood on newspapers that mentions Abigail Wright, pictured here. Before their treatment, they had all come into contact with a book deemed to have unnatural properties. He won't go into any details around it and say that any occult book discovered on the operation is to be reported and not to be read beyond their title and author. He will then hand them an old sat phone, telling them to dial *616 to contact the group securely, but this is to be kept at a minimum, and give them a card for Dr. Richard Dallin, pictured here, that has his details on it. He is expecting their call and is group friendly. The quote on the card is from T.S. Eliot if researched. Those who survive the knife laws will instantly recognise Abigail's name and take a sand hit. Additionally, those who saw the diagrams on napkins will notice that the ones in Abigail's apartment match the ones from the Gateway Bridges restaurant, causing another minor sand hit. Should they speak to the owner, he will advise them that 2015 is the first year they've been able to afford napkins. They didn't exist in 1995. This gives the person asking +1 corruption. Should Exeter be questioned, he will answer what he knows directly about in a truthful manner, but will be as non-forthcoming as possible. Exeter will also give them a handwritten list of names. This can be compared to the handwriting on the inside of the invitation, and it is the same. The names are of the agents that have gone missing, and are all anagrams relating to the King in Yellow, and are not real people. If the agents search for these names, they will show up on standard databases and appear to back up Exeter's claims. However, each time a file on one of them is read, sentences are changed to lines that appear to be from the King in Yellow to those who've read it. It gives us a list of names as well as the occupations they have and what their names actually spell. Next, we move on to Agent Exeter, or as he is really known, Dr. Elias Barbus. At the present time, Dr. Barbus lives over half of his life in the night world. He serves the King in Yellow, but also believes in the mandate of Delta Green. Should he be confronted with evidence of his fading sanity, he will try and subdue or kill. If he captures somebody, they will wake up in Dorchester House under heavy sedation, locked away. On the 29th of May 2015, he was activated by Delta Green to help Dr. Dallin investigate missing patients in Dorchester House. Well, at least he thought it was Delta Green. It was actually Dr. Dallin who activated him. While investigating, he came under the influence of the King in Yellow, and his sudden change in behaviour brought the attention of the real Delta Green. An agent called Michael Whitwer and his team was activated to investigate him, to wit they requested help from Dr. Dallin to commit him for his own protection. Dallin was initially helpful, but the Dorchester House staff turned on the real agents and incarcerated them in Dorchester House in the night world, and as a result Delta Green does not know of their fate. It has a section called Dissociation, where it goes into agents that look into the name of the operation, India Moon. The web will reveal page after page of India's space program, though if examined as a code or anagram it produces a result, daimonian, something the philosopher Plato described as an inner voice that stopped him doing certain things. Further digging into the daimonium will reveal that they are a guiding spirit or demon which incite action, sending heroes on quests and to perform great acts, and it is the origin of the word demon. Pluto describes it in Symposium as a being that interprets and transports human beings to the gods and divine things to men, entreaties and sacrifices from below and ordinances and requittals from above, and grants the reader +1 corruption. So, going back to Barbus, it reveals that he has been handwriting a book called The King in Yellow over and over again in something that goes beyond ritualistic fashion. The reason for the noise of crumpled paper when he moves is due to him keeping pages of the book in his clothing, and he will eat it if he gets hungry. He's become obsessed with clockwork and mechanics, and works day and night inventing new machines from old car parts and the like. He found 2 diagrams in the night world that he created, the lion and the scribe. The lion is a strange mechanical creature that guards his home, and the scribe is an odd mechanical typewriter that has been issuing him instructions. On the 28th of June, it gave him instructions to set up the meeting in the Boston restaurant, and on the 27th of August, it created invitations for the agents to bring them there, somehow knowing their names and connections to Delta Green. We then have the first exegesis of this chapter, the voice on the line. Barbus will give the agents a large 90 SAF phone with a 9-volt adapter, though the battery never seems to run out. It was made by Searing, a company that has a Pegasus as a brand logo. It has 13 keys with numbers and letters displayed, and if turned on it will boot with 3 beeps. No number will appear on the display, and there is no number for receiving calls. The only number that can be put in is *616. If this is done, it will ring twice and then be answered by someone and what they believe is Delta Green. The voice on the other end sounds male, distracted and occasionally interrupted by static. The agents think they are talking to Delta Green, but they are so very wrong. They are speaking to the daimonium, or even the King in Yellow himself. It's given us a tool to guide agents in specific directions, maybe steering clear of some encounters and driving up paranoia. It's always gruff and final and may hang up randomly and won't answer the phone for some time afterwards. If the agent interacted with the sat phone in Abigail's room, they may recognise sounds coming out of this one that match ones that they've already heard, possibly allowing them to communicate through time to themselves. If money or resources are requested, the voice will say, "It is done," and within a day or two things will start turning up in the middle of the night or early morning, left on their doorstep or near their car. They gain +1 corruption. If they try and wait to see who delivers it and they make a luck roll, they may see an odd, stiff-legged silhouette far away that appears to be floating off the ground, dressed in a red and gold uniform. They can never be caught up with and cost a small sand hit. The deliveries are always packed in wooden boxes covered in import-export stamps and chalk. If they are tracked, they go back to Lisbon, Portugal, though one stamp is unidentified. It is YHT/HAL. Additionally, money is always in 1933 D-Series $100 bills that appears new, and some are bloodstained. If they connect the phone to a computer using the old serial port, its date of manufacture can be determined to be the 1st of January 1999, but anything else on there is digital nonsense. If they break it open to examine the insides, it stops working and they can discover, disturbingly, that it is filled with rocks, soil and dried plants, giving them +1 corruption, and those who spoke to whoever answered the phone take a sand hit. In the middle of the phone is a small green glass vial with a green leaf in it that can be identified as a hellebore. If the leaf is examined closely, a tiny golden bug can be seen feeding on it. If they've had the phone a while and been using it, they take a minor sand hit. The next section covers researching searing, the phone manufacturer. A Google search will reveal Seer as the name of a demon in the Ars Goetia, one who controls 26 legions of demons and can go any place on Earth in seconds, and is considered a good-natured demon, depicted as a man riding a winged horse. If the Seer logo is closely examined on the phone, then they may notice that the Pegasus has a small rider, giving them +1 corruption and a minor sand hit. If they continue on a further 40 pages in Google, they will find entries in a PDF called Mental Illness in the Workplace and Beyond, an instruction manual on dealing with mental illness in a corporate setting. In this book, Searing is a fictional company in the examples. The entries are fairly disturbing, having links to the King in Yellow. For example, one is about someone called Abigail W., a regional sales manager for Searing, who was AWOL from work for 2 weeks, then finally appears saying she travelled to a foreign country to marry a king, but having a dishevelled look and not seeming like herself, posing the question, do you report this to the mental health services? Even one of the agents' names appears in it. Should they look into Dorchester House, a Google search will bring up their website and mission statement. It's fully accredited and focuses on high-risk patients such as military vets, law enforcement, fire and rescue in the medical field. They can discover it was founded in 1989 by Richard Dallin and funded by the St. Dymphna Foundation and has a Grade A reputation. If strings are pulled in the medical community, a number of things can be found out. That it is state-of-the-art, a boutique facility that only admits select patients and costs $7,000 a week. It has a low number of complaints and employee turnover, and that Dr. Dallin is very highly regarded in his field on treating violent conditions and PTSD. Dr. Dallin is easily found online in psychiatric journals, publishing dozens of articles on PTSD in the military and with first responders, and he has a social media presence which shows a big burly man smiling and that he lives in Boston and is a bachelor. His middle name is Forus, which is Latin for out or outside, though if it is searched online they can discover that it is the name of a demon from the Ars Goetia, who is a president of hell, obeyed by 29 legions of demons, who teaches logic, ethics, the virtues of herbs and precious stones, and who can make a man witty, eloquent and long-lived, and discover treasures and recover lost things. Learning this gives +1 corruption. Following the meeting with Agent Exeter and investigating his actual identity, the agents could opt to go to his home to see what is happening there. He lives at 919 4th Street, Medford, Massachusetts. His house is a rust-red, 2-storey bungalow that is uneven and has an unkempt lawn in a quiet, tidy neighbourhood. The house's doors and windows are all locked even when Barbus is in there and is in pitch darkness in the evening. His home phone will ring out, never being answered. Should the agents have a poke about the outside of the house, it could attract the attention of neighbours if they're not careful. A search around the outside will uncover a fake rock with a spare key. Dr. Barbus has no security system. Well, maybe not as they imagine it. We have a disinformation section on Dr. Barbus's neighbours. Depending on how the agents speak to them influences how they react. They can approach as law enforcement, which may get them to tell them what they know, and a fumble resulting in complaining to the police. If they're friendly, a human to persuade role is needed. If they pass, the neighbour will tell them what they know and say nothing. Just a human roll tells them the facts but leaves out the stranger things, and if just to persuade is fumbled, they tell Barbus of the visit. If they try a strong arm approach, 2 persuade rolls are needed. If not identifying as law enforcement, these rolls are at a penalty of -20%. A double success means they tell the agents all they know and say nothing. If they fail any of them, they will confess the meeting to other neighbours. A fumble will involve them recording the encounter on video and contacting the police. The neighbours themselves can actually provide quite a bit of information. Firstly, there is Jesus S. Torian. He lives next door with his wife and children and is a security guard who will happily communicate with law enforcement. You can tell them that Barbus has been weird since around June, saying the house is falling into ruin. He will tell them that the electricity was recently shut off and that Barbus moves around the house in an old mining helmet and that they often hear odd mechanical noises coming from within, especially at night. They haven't spoken to him in months and they think he may be mentally ill. The neighbour at the rear of his house is Ruby J. Morris, a widow whose house overlooks the back of Barbus's. She will talk about the black guy losing his marbles and it being a house full of lunatics, claiming to have seen a woman in the backyard one night naked. She had olive skin and dark curly hair and was good looking, I guess. She also says that she saw him with a white-haired man in his kitchen in lamplight one morning. His other neighbour is Daniel C. Whitten, an ex-Marine who lives in a clean, utilitarian home. He used to speak to Barbus every morning as they left for work and is hesitant to talk about him. If he's pushed, he will say that strange things have been happening. Since June, he has essentially vanished, and he has heard chanting coming from the house and the sound of what he describes as a sump pump or something like a pogo stick. He also says he has seen people watching the house, and while returning from a night run in late June, he confronted a group of people arguing in a rental car across from his house, 1 woman and 2 men, but they drove off. It gives us a map of the house and then it starts detailing the house itself. The porch has a patio with an overhang and it seems like it's hardly used, including the front door. The first clue is the mail. If somebody takes the time to sift through the water-damaged mail, they can see signs of a lifestyle fading away with notices of power and water being disconnected on the 15th of August and threats to his job. There's an odd-looking postcard pictured here that has a cipher on it, which, if cracked, appears to be to Dearest M and mentions the Towers of Gold and Yittil being a wonder, though it doesn't say who it's from. The next disinformation section is entitled Spying on Barbus's House. He only leaves at night and parks in the driveway and enters the house around the back, usually with a box of machine parts or books. Each hour that the house is watched, when he is actually home at night, an alertness is rolled, and each success gets some strangeness. The first is the red books. He can be seen hauling Chiquita banana boxes filled with identical red leather-bound books. He wears a ceremonial red robe, and he will head upstairs and then can be seen talking to himself. Anyone who can lip read can spot that he is repeating something over and over again. When he returns from upstairs, the robe, box and books are gone. If they've seen the man in the red robe in the bookshop earlier, they take a small sand hit. Smoke can also be seen coming from the bedroom window occasionally, and in dark rooms he wears what looks like a miner's hat to light the way. He can sometimes be seen talking to someone out of view and make strange posed hand gestures like a signal. They can also at times hear the repetitive mechanical clanking of a machine that make the windows rattle, and occasionally they can hear Barbus shouting something at it which causes it to stop. At times they can hear him yelling what sounds like an invocation, with a male foreign-sounding voice replying back, possibly French. Also, as previously noted, they can see a half-dressed woman in a gauzy white robe at the bedroom window who seems to be listening to an unknown talker. Barbus will then stomp out of the back door with a box of auto parts and discard them. No amount of searching can find the woman inside. Once they get inside the house, they can note that it smells overwhelmingly of oil. The electricity is off and it's dark and dingy, causing a penalty to site-related actions and making movement difficult. The bedroom at the back of the house is abandoned. However, the living room and dining room are another matter. They've been cleared to a bare wooden floor which is stained with oil and gasoline and is pitted. It has automobile components and machinery strewn about, as well as tools and old books. However, the most prominent thing here is the lion. Coming near it causes it to activate, and it is lethal. More on the lion near the end of the chapter. If it is searched, they can find a stained photocopy of Ars Goetia with notes in it made by Barbus. There are a number of clues in these rooms. The first is the copper mould and the smashed statue. A pile of broken ceramics can be found in a corner on sheets of newspaper. Anyone with the right art skill can determine that it is the pieces of a wax casting. If a few hours are spent putting it together, it looks like a cast for a 2-foot statue of a cherub wearing a harlequin mask. The copy of the Ars Goetia is 52 pages long and patched together with tape and printed out. It's covered in oil stains and scribbled notes in Barbus's handwriting. Reading it gives a +1% to the reader's occult skill. The notes written throughout are hard to make sense of and are listed here, and there's one page that has something called the preliminary invocation on it that is in a different handwriting. It is that of Timothy Bale. More on him later. The agents can actually follow the instructions to summon one of the 72 demons. The next room is the kitchen. It is in a bit of a state with paint tins on the counter holding nuts soaking in gasoline. The fridge has long been switched off and dishes are smashed in the corner of the room. A search of it will find a burner cell phone taped to the underside of a drawer. This phone belongs to Michael Whitwer, or Agent Vega, who used it to communicate with Ophelia Citri, his fiancée, while on a mission in Boston for Delta Green investigating Dr. Barbus. For some reason, Barbus kept the phone. It's a flip type that is dead. The plastic case has a symbol scratched onto it, which an occult roll will uncover as that of the demon Citri. This information is in the Ars Goetia. It gives them +1 corruption. Citri is described as a great prince of hell who rules over 60 legions of demons and causes men and women to fall in love with each other, having the ability to become naked if desired. He has the face of a leopard and a griffin's wings, but can change into a very attractive person if requested. If the phone is charged, there will be around 24 messages from Ophelia Citri looking for Michael, and one from DEA Special Agent Reuben Hardrick asking Michael to turn himself in. We have a disinformation section called Working the Cell Phone. The phone provides a lead to Ophelia Citri in Las Vegas, if they can work it out. If they don't find it, the handler is encouraged to alert them to its presence with a beep indicating a low battery or messages full. If the last number is called, it is the main line to Dorchester House. If the phone is looked at with computer tools, they can find out that it was activated on the 29th of June 2015 using a So Simple SIM card. If the phone is hacked into, it can be discovered that calls to Ophelia Citri, room 616 of the Boxer Hotel and Dorchester House have been deleted. If the telephone companies are leaned on using law enforcement, a report will show that it was first used near Boston Logan International Airport and later near the Boxer Hotel in the Dorchester neighbourhood. The last call was near Dorchester House on the 8th of July 2015. If a favour from someone in intelligence services is pulled, then they can gain access to files on Ophelia Citri and DEA Special Agent Michael Whitwer, noting that Whitwer is missing and under investigation. There is a bathroom on the ground floor which seems to be untouched and dusty. A pile of books are stacked neatly in the sink. Inspection of the inside will see various sentences and words have been cut out. If they examine for an hour, one of the books can be found to have an inscription on the inside, P. Samagina. Moving to the upstairs, we have Dr. Barbus's bedroom. It is a wreck of splintered furniture and piles of dirty clothing. There's a micro-grill next to a futon. The closet is closed and the mirror smashed, and the wooden floor is scarred with half-moon marks. These deep gouges are footprints of the lion. Underneath the futon, a seal is etched onto the floor, with those skilled in occult noting that it is related to demonology, more specifically Marbus, again found in the Ars Goetia. This grants +1 corruption. Marbus is described as the great president of hell who governs 36 legions of demons. He answers the truth on hidden or secret things and can cause and heal diseases and teaches the mechanical arts and can change men into other shapes. He appears as a great lion that can become a man fast. There's a clue in this room in the grill. It has fragments of thick brown vellum in it that if searched can produce the words Alden, Yadiz, Uot, Yellow and the Phantom of True. The second bedroom was once a home office and still has most of the furniture, though there is the top of a desk on the floor that appears to have had the legs knocked off it, which sits amongst a sea of papers, diagrams, books and receipts. On top of the desk is a strange contraption, the scribe. It looks like a cross between a typewriter, a clock and a cotton gin. It has a limb-like shaft that holds quill and an ink pot is set into the base of the machine. It can be easily transported if required. Anyone with craft skills in mechanics can spend an hour studying it and work out how it works, noting that it has no power source, which gives +1 corruption and a small san hit. A copy of the King in Yellow can be created by it, and if so, 4 san are lost. It has a paper hopper, which when paper is inserted into it, causes the scribe to spring to life, and it presses and folds the paper and starts writing on it, making a racket of noise. The handwriting is exactly the same as on the invitation to the party that they will have received. What it produces is based on the corruption score of the individual. If it is 2 or lower, it will write a Latin phrase, Secretum secretorum tu operansis secretus horum, which is roughly translated as, the secrets of secrets, thou that workst them, be secret in them. The right occult roll will recognise it as being from a book called Pseudomonarchia Demonomen. At a corruption score of 3 upwards, it'll produce all manner of things. Quotes from the King in Yellow, the Ars Goetia, etc. Underneath the slot is a second one that one of the red leather notebooks can fit into. If one is put in, the scribe will spring to life, and after 6 minutes 16 seconds, a copy of the red book King in Yellow will pop out the other end, though Barbus has to recharge it by hand-feeding pages from the book into it weekly. The next thing detailed is exeunt, the closet and the red door. Inside Barbus's house, the closet is long and narrow and painted red, with piles of clothes scattered about. Opposite the closet door is a miniature door set into the wall behind a set of iron bars cast in cement blocks. There's a postal slot set into the door leading beyond. The door is just over 1/2 metre tall and wide, and if opened it gives +1 corruption. The other side is a dimly lit hallway with a wooden floor stacked with books. Seeing this causes a small sand hit that stacks with a second one if the door has been seen in the bookshop earlier. Nobody can pass through the door, and if anyone listens at it, the sound of distant traffic can be heard, along with muffled conversations. If they shout for attention, nothing is heard, though the handler is encouraged to make a note of what they say and let the characters hear the shouting should they go to the bookshop at a later date. Anything pushed through the door from the bookshop will be on the floor here. Barbus uses this to pass copies of the King in Yellow to the bookshop. Any attempt to break the blocks or cut the bars will cause the door to collapse, possibly damaging the agent and the structure of the house. The next clues that can be found are the ruined invitations and the cheat sheet. Amongst the papers near the scribe, half-printed and misfolded invitations can be found. Underneath the pile is a single piece of paper that is essentially a cheat sheet on each of the agents. It contains all of their details about their home, work and private life, as well as their addresses, even details that have been concealed, as well as information on all of their bonds. This obviously causes a sand hit. In a corner, a previous cheat sheet lies crumpled. This contains everything about Agent Vega and the team that was captured by Dr. Dallin in July. A hotel address is listed, the Boxer Hotel in Boston, room 616. Another clue that can be found is a page that is folded and ripped but contains passages from the King in Yellow in Barbus's handwriting. Each of the lines has an error in them. This is in a handout pictured here. The final clue in Dr. Barbus's house is the blank leather notebooks. These boxes have Amazon.com shipping labels on them and contained 32 red leather covered notebooks bought on the 29th of July 2015. The box has 6 left. If any of the agents have seen the red book King in Yellow, these books are identical. If one from 1951 is forensically examined, it will be noted that they were all printed by the scribe, which gives another sand hit. Underneath this box is 3 flattened empty boxes. The last thing in this section is in the field, contacting Delta Green. Should the agents uncover anything about Barbus that they consider untoward, they may decide not to use the sat phone and try reaching out to Delta Green. If they're successful, depending on what they say, could lead nowhere, or worse. Should they mention Operation India Moon, the agents will be told that no mission of that name exists. They tell the agents that Dr. Barbus is now their target and that he is considered to be compromised by unnatural forces. If he doesn't suspect them, they should report to him until they find out what is happening. Delta Green may share that another team is investigating him and are missing. If they mention the King in Yellow, in any of its forms, they are told to report to the Trivolino Mall for a debriefing. They will be met there by a hit team intent on killing them, as they are believed to be compromised, and their bodies will never be found. If they mention Vega, Whitwer, or other members of his team, Delta Green will extract as much information from them as possible. Once they realise that the agents don't know his location, the conversation ends, though Delta Green may tell them that he's under investigation by the DEA and is missing. If they mention the sat phone, they'll be told that no such phone exists and that it should be considered suspect. They are told to examine it for evidence and get that info to Delta Green as soon as possible. If the strangeness surrounding the phone is mentioned, they will be told to go to the Trivolino Mall. The next section covers the Trivolino Mall ambush. Dr. Barbus has become compromised and Delta Green are unaware of any psychiatric patients at Dorchester House, nor of its being consumed by the King in Yellow, or even that Dorchester House is in any way involved. Project Mercy, that which was created to bring Dr. Barbus in, has resulted in 3 missing agents and Michael Whitwer being investigated by the DEA. Should Delta Green have reason to believe that the agents have been compromised by somebody acting as the group, its response will be to wipe all of them out, especially those with knowledge of the King in Yellow. This is set up as a debriefing, with them being ambushed and killed as soon as they arrive. If the Trivolino Mall is researched, it can be discovered to be around 50 kilometres southwest of Boston, and the meeting is arranged for 11 p.m. the next evening, with all team members invited, along with everything that they have obtained on their mission. If it is looked up on Google, it will show as a 20-store, 2-storey mall surrounded by marshland off the state highway. It has the usual businesses such as Sears, Toys R Us and Radio Shack, amongst others. None of the businesses in the mall can be reached. If they dig deeper, they can discover that it closed in 2014 after only being open for 2 years due to radon levels being too high. The company that owned it was sued and filed for bankruptcy, and it has essentially been abandoned for a year, though digging a bit further can reveal some disturbing events. White Moons LLC, the company who ultimately owned the mall, is in turn owned by Eva Lundin, the youngest daughter of Henry F. Lundin, the original owner of the McAllister building. In fact, Eva was born there in 1942 and still lives in New York City managing various portfolios left to her by her mother. The name of the mall, Trivolino, is a character from a style of Italian stage production from between the 16th to 18th century that involves most performers wearing masks, with Trivolino usually being a stupid character clothed in red or yellow with burgundy stars and moons on their costume, who was a foil for a smarter character. They wore a black half-face mask with wide comical eyes. The next section is a disinformation one called Contacting Eva Lundin. She is the last living member of her family who lives in New York City, and her affairs are managed by Rosalie Bundy, a general money person, though Eva is very much involved. Everything she does is above board, and she's worth around $45 million on paper. If anyone tries to contact her, they're ignored. People who try on a law enforcement or military basis are immediately contacted back by Rosalie to check their credentials, and then Eva will call them. Appointments on legal issues can easily be made, as well as ones around criminal cases, as long as she is not a suspect. Her office is at 160 West 58th Street, though it is not used often. It's lavish and expensive, with the walls covered in black and white photographs. They include a photo of the family dog, Abraham, which agents will recognise as Dog from the McAllister building, and she has a display of various figurines and the Cocklecot's mask. More on that later. To talk to, Eva is very forthcoming, and an elderly man will sit nearby in silence, recording her conversation, presumably her lawyer. If asked about the Lundin family home, the McAllister building, she will have fond memories of it and lived there until she was around 10, and will remember that her father adored it, but her brother and mother hated it. When talking about her brother, they can find out that she was a late child, and Charlie was her father's heir. He developed mental problems in around 1949 and committed suicide in 1950 at the McAllister building. Eva will suggest that he was schizophrenic, but an incredibly talented musician, remembering him talking to and chasing people through the building at all hours. Nobody else could see these people. She believes her brother's suicide by hanging was the cause of her father's downward spiral. If asked about the Trivolino Mall, she will say that it was a poor investment that looked like a potential gold mine. The design and decoration were made using Eva's direction, and it was named after her father's collection of figures and 17th century French and Italian masks, which he bought at an auction. She can tell them that the design of the fountain is the same as a strange mark found on the Cocklecot's mask. She will allow it to be looked at, but won't part with it. The fountain in the mall is based on the yellow sign, though she knows nothing of the king in yellow. When talking about her father, she'll mention that he was obsessed with the occult and was exuberant and overbearing, being a member of the Thoth Hermes temple in Chicago when he was younger, always seeming to be in the presence of strange people. This included Exeter Bundy, the designer of the McAllister building, who turned out to be a child killer. After Charlie died, he acted stranger and could be heard opening doors around the building at any hour of the day. She has no clue as to why he was wearing a silver cloak and a mask when he died, but will remember him mentioning that he had a meeting to go to that evening. We then have a clue to do with the Trivolino Mall. If they look into the crime statistics of the mall while it was open, there is one of particular interest: the Golden Boy burglaries. First reported on the 30th of August 2012 by one of the security guards, Charles M. Brandis, he said he noticed an individual in the mall after hours and chased them. He described the person as someone child-size and covered head to toe in a golden sheet. No matter how much he chased them, they always got away, even though the mall was locked. There are videotapes to back up what he says, with his so-called golden boy vanishing in areas between the coverage of 2 cameras. Brandis said that he chased this person most nights without ever getting near capturing them. He even reported it to the police on 10 occasions, who conducted 4 on-site searches, finding nothing. On the 30th of August 2013, Brandis committed suicide exactly a year after the first sighting. If more information is tracked down, the right rolls need to be made, and they can discover, chillingly, that his suicide note simply said, "He followed me home tonight." The golden boy was never seen again, and police doubted the story, theorising that he had perpetrated a hoax with a friend to get internet famous. We then move on to the mall itself. It's located in an isolated area with nothing nearby but marshland. High radon emissions meant plans had to be abandoned, and there are warning signs visible to anyone trespassing, though a quick internet search can determine that short-term exposure is not considered life-threatening. At night, the mall is bathed in darkness. The sign is 3 stories tall and topped with a billboard that reads Trivolino Mall, with the image of a wide-eyed, masked face next to it. All of the store signs underneath it have been removed. It can be climbed using an attached ladder. Anyone climbing this has a good view of the entire mall, granting a bonus to sniping. There is an access gate that is shut but not locked, and it is generally in a good state, having avoided vandals and graffiti artists, with even the homeless giving it a wide berth. If the agents are smart, paranoid, or perhaps both, they may choose to stake out the mall. It will be obvious that taking the main road in is not the best of ideas, as the meeting is secretive and it's against all that they have ever learned. It can, however, be approached via the marshland where they can stay hidden. As they approach the fence surrounding the car park, whoever has the highest corruption score will see people moving around 100 metres away, which includes a child wearing a strange metallic onesie. There are 4 other people wearing sunglasses, hats and normal clothing moving large boxes from a truck to the mall. The agents can sneak up on the truck. Success means they remain hidden, and the next time they look, the child is gone. If they get caught, the people draw guns on them, and if the agents surrender, they restrain them with zip ties, take them into the mall and execute them. If anyone gets a look into the back of the truck, they can see cardboard boxes that the right skill will identify as formerly containing night vision goggles. The truck can be tracked down as a rental to a John Green that day at Boston Logan International Airport. The driving licence used to hire it was a fake. Moving inside the mall, it is dusty and abandoned, though footprints can be seen tracking to and fro from the indoors. It is pitch dark inside and has an eerie feeling. All actions that rely on the senses take a penalty here if in the daytime and automatically fail at night. There's an atrium with a strange shaped fountain that has long dried up. The shape is hard to make out from the ground level, but when viewed from above it can be identified as the yellow sign. There are metal fences that block off pathways beyond the one leading to it, and there is a second floor walkway visible. All of the stores here are abandoned and empty. Unbeknownst to the agents, the atrium has been set up as a kill box. Delta Green expects the agents to walk into it and be killed by 4 gunmen above and 2 gunmen entering behind them. If the agents manage to survive and get away with some of their guns, the weapons can be traced back to a conflict with the Sinaloa cartel in 1995. It's essentially been set up to look like a drug hit. It's also worth mentioning that each of the gunmen carries $6,000 which have been coated in cocaine to plant on their bodies to help sell the narrative. The team will be ruthless in their attack. The agents can take limited cover here. Just before the firefight happens, something particularly odd manifests. If agents have actually checked out the story of the Golden Boy, they may receive a warning from Carcosa. The agent with the highest corruption score will see a child-sized figure in one of the abandoned shops, dancing in silence. They then seem to focus on the agent and mimic people shooting, pointing up to the balconies and then showing 3 fingers twice, then holding a golden finger to its mouth and miming, shh. Right after that the attack happens, but they gain a free turn to act. If they search the store at any point, they see only a mannequin where the boy was, taking a minor sand hit and gaining +1 corruption. When the shooting begins, agents with the corruption of 2 or more hear a gong sound. They then see children appear in a fountain, 1 for each of the kill team and 1 for each agent. They are dressed in golden clothing from head to toe and they are dancing. The kill team are oblivious. It causes a sand hit and those who lose 2 or more are at -20% to all rolls due to the distraction. The children dance through the firefight and a drumbeat and tambourine can be heard but not seen. They split up and move toward each person present, passing through physical boundaries like ghosts, being unharmed by anything that hits them. This causes a further sand hit. If they can be seen, the person can realise that they are moving towards them trying to touch them. This can be dodged if required. If they fail, the child touches them and vanishes. Disturbingly, if someone dies before they're touched, the child will curl up atop them, mimicking their death pose, and then vanish. No evidence remains. The final part of this video talks about Dorchester House. Based at 48 Northwood Street, Boston, Massachusetts, the Dorchester House psychiatric facility was built in 1912 as a school but closed in 1944. It opened and closed numerous times until 1986 when the Dallin company bought it with an investment from the St. Dymphna Foundation, reopening in 1989 in the form it currently takes. Their mission statement is study, help and treat violence-related mental illness, specialising in psychotic episodes stemming from PTSD. Most local people are unaware of its purpose, still being called the school by some, though many local businesses are fully aware as they serve the staff daily. It's led by Dr. Richard F. Dallin, a former friendly of Delta Green. It's operated for 26 years without any issues, publicly helping soldiers and the like, but secretly helping Delta Green agents scarred from their exposure to things that man was not meant to see. It's a 17,000 square foot 3-storey capital E-shaped building, surrounded by a stylish wrought iron fence and guarded by cameras and motion sensors. It has 2 entrances, a driveway leading to a gatehouse on the front door and a utility entrance to the rear. The gatehouse is manned between 10 AM and 6 PM by 2 security guards who keep track of comings and goings. The front gate also has a buzzer for entrance at night. The centre of the E-shape holds the admin, cafeteria, group rooms and offices. The north end is for the men, the south for the women, with each wing sleeping 30 patients at capacity. The whole facility is run by 29 staff members. Inside, it still has the appearance of a school, replete with old lockers in the hallways and the cafeteria clearly being a former gymnasium. Almost all of the doors are reinforced with steel and have card locks. The windows are similarly reinforced and locked. The facility has many fire and smoke detectors throughout and a sprinkler system. This leads to our first op-int, breaking and entering. It makes the point that Dorchester House is hard to break into and navigate, even though the inside changes at night. The exterior remains largely the same. The outside fence is 2.5 metres high and has anti-climbing hooks that are hard to get over. The motion sensors sweep the ground constantly, though they can be disabled, as can the cameras. A critical roll when trying these drops the entire system for an hour. The walls are mostly reinforced cinder blocks, and the place has fire doors and key locks. In fact, the doors are so strong they can stop a bullet. The keycards can be faked, though that involves obtaining a valid one, though it is worth mentioning that the locks can be disassembled by those with the right skills. In addition to this, the windows don't actually open. They have an industrial HVAC system to deal with airflow, and the windows are reinforced with wire mesh and are shatterproof, though with enough effort they can be broken into. We then move on to the secrets of Dorchester House. Similar to the McAllister building, it has become a vector for the infection of Carcosa, most likely from an agent that had been incarcerated here. The staff in the building have subsequently become vectors, and the place is connected to the night world. After dark, all inside fall under the sway of the king. Each night, the people that are here are replaced by doubles from the night world, and not entirely human and do strange things, but always vanish by dawn. Dorchester House after dark means travel to the night world is inevitable. During the day it operates pretty much as you may expect. The wings are connected via hallways and there are 3 floors to the buildings. The 3rd floor is a high security area and the most heavily staffed, as it houses the most troublesome patients, whose doors are required to be left open during the day. Staff are here at all hours and possessions are heavily regulated. The 2nd floor is medium security, or as it's known, Club Med, with some patients having their own rooms depending on the current intake. This tends to be the floor that patients stay the longest on. Trust is given, but quickly withdrawn if abused. The 1st floor is known as the Mall, and has the least staff and is unrestricted. Patients meet friends and family here, play games, have group therapy and eat in the cafeteria, which closes at 6:15 PM. Contraband is based on the floor, with the 1st disallowing drugs and weapons to the 3rd banning belts, shoelaces, caffeine, unsupervised internet access and the like. The 3rd is the only floor that disallows unsupervised access. We are given a number of terms that are used in the facility, things like bump, which means an attack, to starfish, which is a 5-point restraint, usually with sedation. And then we go into the disinformation section called the St. Dymphna Foundation. If it is looked into, it can be discovered that St. Dymphna is the patron saint of the mentally ill, and the foundation was formed in 1986 in Turks and Caicos with a sum of $175 million. Investigating the directors and any digital traces turns up nothing, and digging deeper produces fake tax numbers at the slightest investigation. Someone skilled in bureaucracy can track down the original receipt, which has the signature of a John Green on it. Anyone who asks the staff phone about the foundation are told to stop investigating both the foundation and Dorchester House. If Delta Green are reached out to, they get a similar answer. We then go into the staff of Dorchester House. By day there are 29 staff members, including Dr. Dallin and the head nurse Esther Samagina, and all of the staff are infected and have brought it from there to their homes. It details some of them. There is Dr. Dallin, who's the authority of the facility, as well as being a Delta Green friendly, and he should always be nearby when the agents are at the facility. Next is head nurse Esther Stamagina, and is always close by when the agents visit. By all appearances, she is sincere about the missing patient and will go out of her way to help the agents, even at the possibility of unveiling elements of the King in Yellow infection during the daytime. It details orderly Richard Bryce, who is on call at the facility to help out where needed. He carries a gym bag at all times that contains the body of a mummified, unidentified child, and he can be seen quietly asking her questions when alone. Those with a corruption of more than 2 hear faint answers being whispered back from it, and can even ask her questions should the opportunity present itself. We have orderly Michael Devaughn, who works in the security room. He has found out that in a field near Charles's River there is a passage to the Whisper Labyrinth in the trunk of an abandoned Dodge Dart, and every evening after work he heads there fully kitted out in spelunking gear to explore it. If observed, he enters it and vanishes. Those with corruption of 4 or more can see a hole in the ground that opens to the tunnels of the Whisper Labyrinth. Those with less find a rusted car. He can be ambushed as he emerges and may be in possession of a soul bottle, melonia, or a gold bug, also possibly an invitation. If the agents enter the labyrinth, they will fumble around for a few hours and then emerge from the dark with nothing. There's registered nurse Ulrika Vors, who works on the 2nd floor. If encountered outside Dorchester House, there's obviously something not right about her. She will cause arguments with random passers-by, and a few times a day will spend an hour or so in the bathroom of a restaurant or eatery, vomiting up small golden animals. Should anyone suspect this, they gain a +1 corruption and have stomach cramps and make a SAN roll. If they fail, they lose D4 SAN and vomit up a tiny golden animal daily for D4 days, causing a SAN hit each time. We have orderly Gail Houston. She works on the front desk in the admin building, but spends her free time driving around Boston for hours on end looking for children to kidnap. Even though the child is screaming, nobody seems to notice other than the agents should they follow her. She puts the child in the truck and then drives to a quiet area, climbs in the back and bludgeons them until they stop making noise. If the truck is searched, a child-sized articulated mannequin will be found, causing SAN loss. If they intervene in the street, the child is a mannequin. If she is followed, she will eventually drive to the Boxer Hotel and enter carrying a big suitcase. If she's followed inside, they will see her enter the missing room and vanish. More on the missing room in the next video. We then move on to the patients at Dorchester House during the day. There are currently 22, of which 10 are on the 3rd floor, 8 the 2nd and 4 the 1st. All patients here are infected by the King in Yellow to some degree. It gives a few examples, 2 of which are really important. First is Ed Myler Wist, who is on the 3rd floor by day. He murdered his parents and sister in 2010 on his 16th birthday and is incredibly wealthy. He was originally convicted of murder but had it overturned to an insanity conviction. Dorchester House was selected by his family trust and he has been on the 3rd floor for 1 year. He is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He comes across as charming and broke, and he carries a small brown leather notebook with him at all times. His reputation book, which is filled with small notes on people that he uses to get them to tell him their secrets. We have a disinformation section on researching Wist. His crimes can be easily found on search engines, and they can find out that his name was originally Guison. His mother changed it when she remarried. A search for Guison gives +1 corruption, and it can be discovered that it is a demon from the Ars Goetia, a strong Great Duke of Hell ruling over 40 legions of demons. He can tell things past, present and future, showing the meaning of questions asked to him. He reconciles friends and gives honour and dignity. Within the facility itself, Wist is the go-to person to get hold of items, solve problems and spread rumours. He is represented by the law firm Keyes, Norris, Ingalls and Grant. They in turn employ 40 people, and they always have Wist's interests at heart. He can hire people to do anything on the outside. Private investigators, actors, stunt doubles, anywhere, anytime, and pretty much do whatever he wants. He will be out to secure his hold on the agents. It's all done using funding diverted through front companies, LLCs created days before the action's done to irritate and wear down the agents. If he somehow finds out their true identities, he will go all out to find out every scrap of information about them, down to taking hair samples from hotel beds and dusting for fingerprints. This will extend to their family. He'll have them hacked and investigated, and he will go to any length. The law firm are litigious and extremists, and will pursue all complaints of harassment against their clients. It's worth noting that the stationery of the company reads KNIG, an anagram of King. If this is noticed, +1 corruption is gained. Wist himself keeps notes on everyone at the facility and will refuse access to his book, throwing a screaming fit if it is taken from him. He hopes to find out all he can about them to embed himself in their lives. He would claim if asked that he spoke to the missing patients, but only knows mundane facts up to their disappearance, claiming it was like a camera trick. He was actually locked in his room at the time, but will claim he has eyes and ears everywhere. Before they leave, he will hand the agent with the highest corruption score a note that says, "How did you find me? I thought you had left. In any case, they are still here at night." The next person is Timothy Bale. He's an army veteran who served in Iraq twice and suffers from PTSD. His second tour was ended when an IED killed everyone on his transport, shattering his right knee and made him deaf in his right ear. He sought help after a few bad weeks at home. He comes across as friendly with the agents and is happy to talk about his psychosis. He has survivor's guilt and believes people think him a coward and has difficulty with loud noises. He's been in Dorchester House for 2 years and has improved, but is considered a danger to himself. Around 3 months ago, things that were once invisible reveal themselves to Bale. He sees portent and signs and writes them down, and has a battered wire-bound notebook that he writes in red pen what is described as a strange litany of levers that he can push or pull to make strange individuals do his bidding, some not in the hospital. It has bizarre geometric patterns with creepy names that can be recognised as being from the Ars Goetia. He will flip through this book while in conversation and talk about the various names. He will say that the hospital is nice but spooky at night recently, with people in silver robes and masks making a racket, not knowing who they are but thinking it's part of his treatment. We have a disinformation section on Bale. If he is googled, the agent gains +1 corruption and learns that Bale is the name of a demon from the Ars Goetia, the principal spirit of hell, ruling over 66 legions of demons and appearing in diverse shapes, sometimes a cat, a toad or a man, or maybe all at once. He has a hoarse and thin voice and has the power to grant invisibility and transport others around the world. It then details a few minor characters. We have Dorothy Yale, a woman with a fish-like face and dark hair that always looks worried. She thinks she can hear voices of the dead through electronic devices and somehow knows when people are carrying electronics, even when concealed. There is John Paylott, a tall, incredibly thin man with shaggy hair and close-set eyes. He comes across as falsely jovial and will be friendly to the agents. He thinks the world is not real and that he is in hell, believing death will give him freedom. He's always looking for a weapon to use to try and escape and has healed scars on his wrists. There is Cloris Gareth Vance, a short woman with wild blonde hair. She is mild but believes herself to be omnipotent, becoming threatening, dismissive and argumentative when having a moment. She makes origami sculptures of small animals during the day. The last person detailed is Rudolph Valata, a quiet middle-aged man who has PTSD from a military tour of Afghanistan. He's nearly recovered and his depression is lifted, though has noticed strange puppets moving through the halls in recent months. So now we move on to arriving at Dorchester House by day. The agents can park near the main entrance, and if they ask to see Dr. Dallin, they will be given access as he is expecting them. They are met by Gail Houston and are asked to sign in and surrender weapons which are locked up securely. They each obtain a blue keycard with their name written on it, and this is needed to open emergency exits as well as common rooms. They will be led up to Dr. Dallin's office, and the journey there is an opportunity to meet staff or patients. Dallin's office enjoys a view of the Neponset River and is wooden floored with a stone fireplace. He has a French-designed desk that looks strange with such a huge man sitting behind it, and has shelves to the ceiling filled with books, almost all about mental illness, and a complete run of the American Journal of Psychiatry from 1983 to present day. Dallin also has a rock collection with small custom spotlights on each. They are of course all labelled. The agents may have actually encountered Dr. Dallin in the night floors, but he will dismiss it outright if brought up. He is eager to talk about the missing patients and give the agents their files, answering their questions. He can tell them that at 8:11 p.m. on the 28th of August 2015, the patients all vanished from their rooms on the 3rd floor. Each of them had been sedated and restrained to their beds between 6 to 6:34 p.m. Disturbing writing was found on one wall. He will show them a photo the same as Agent Exeter's. There were no signs of a breach and no electronic door entries were recorded. The rooms were completely secure. The files he gives them don't mention Delta Green and are fairly basic. After answering questions, he will call in Nurse Samagina to give them an extensive tour of the facility. This allows them to speak with staff and patients. It gives some information on the average patient's room, the cafeteria, and the secure nurse stations. Nothing of interest can be found in the rooms of the missing patients except the writing and blood on one of the walls. Should the agents manage to get to Dr. Dallin's room alone at any point, there is a strange watch in one of his desk drawers. It's a Bulova watch that belonged to Michael Whitwer. where the numbers have been replaced by ALONGTHESHOR, and on the back, Eth Ecloudwa Ave SB Ria K Thet Wins U. A place of interest is the security and server room. They are on the 3rd floor and are connected together. There is a 2-seater 16-screen security station along with controls for the cameras, locks and fire suppression system. Recordings are kept for 4 weeks. Michael Devaughn was on duty on the night of the disappearance, and a chat with him and a good human role will reveal he's being completely honest. They will be given as much access to the terminal as they need. If the system is examined, the video records of the disappearance were lost when a disk error caused the system to glitch, preventing backup. Essentially, the agents have full access to the entire facility and will be given schematics by Nurse Samagina. We have a section called OPINT, Getting Agents into Dorchester House After Dark. Every evening at around 7:19 PM, Dorchester House becomes different. Any agent in there is captured by the power of the night world. So in order to have the agents there when this happens, it gives us some hints on getting them there or keeping them there, though obviously they may suspect nothing and stay there late by accident. It recommends stalling them, using the idea of secret areas existing that can be hard to get to. There are false calls that could split the group, leading them to parts of the facility, even receiving calls from doppelgangers telling them to get to the facility as soon as possible for a myriad of reasons. They may be jumped and sedated by the staff in crazed unison and restrained, only being released after dark. Another reason could be that one of the patients tells them that Abby lives in Dorchester House, but only after dark. It's essentially whatever the handler feels their group will fall for. The last thing to talk about in this video is Dr. Dallin's residence. He used to live at 145 Adams Street, apartment 224, Boston, Massachusetts, but as he has now been entirely consumed by Carcosa, his address no longer exists. By all appearances, it has vanished completely. Agents can find records of it, but if they go there, they cannot physically locate the building, which causes a sand hit. Dallin, if asked, will claim it's exactly as it should be, and if forced to take the agents there, will do so, with the agents finding it as it should be, fully intact, causing another sand hit if they found it missing. Okay, that concludes part 1 of a volume of Secret Faces. Part 2 will be a breakdown of Nurse Samagina's residence, Encounter Group, Citri's residence, Dorchester House by Night, and Exeunt, the Missing Room.